Morning, Jen.
Hi, Kev. How are you doing?
Fine and you.
Good, thank you.
Thank you for joining me today online. Please tell us who you are and what you do, because I want everybody to know about that.
Okay, so I'm a behavioral change specialist. I work across many areas, but mostly I deal with trauma, with executive coaching, more from the point of view of assisting individuals to better manage their environment, better respond, and more on the, I suppose, emotional intelligence side.
Yeah.
Um, and yes, I do training, I do workshops. That's what I do.
Fantastic. So one of the reasons why I wanted to have this conversation with you is I just want to make sure we've got light here and all the lights are on. So one of the reasons recently you posted on Facebook, you were chatting about how children are affected with being in lockdown. And one of the reasons from a business by design perspective, a lot of business people are really caught up doing business at home in a home environment. And I think, it's a useful conversation to have right now, where we need to consider that business people are also parents, and suddenly they flung into an environment where they have to suddenly become a teacher, and work and create structure and all of the stuff. And I know that you mentioned some really vital points that happened on Facebook. So I want to chat with you and sort of get more information out of that, to really just help people understand it better, and to share that with my audience.
Thanks, Kev. So I think that this is something that people are experiencing across the board.
Yeah.
I think it's important for us to acknowledge that, first of all, we're not alone. We're not the only ones going through this. We're not the only ones experiencing this. And to acknowledge the situation for what it is. We have a global crisis. We have a situations where everybody is affected in some way. For a lot of people, their fundamental needs are being threatened at the moment.
Yeah.
So we have an entire worldwide group of people who are sitting with increased cortisol levels, where they're in a high stress situation. Now, what happens for us in the brain is that it shuts down our limbic system, which means we go into fight or flight mode, which means our ability to regulate our emotional state, our ability to be rational, our ability to apply logic and problem solving is compromised.
Yeah.
Nobody is beyond the sum of those kind of effects. So, I think regardless of who it is, we need to acknowledge that. We need to accept it for what it is and look at, instead of driving ourselves to burnout and trying to pretend that this is not happening in our world, accept it, acknowledge it, and look at, what are the things that we can do to bring those cortisol levels down, so that regardless of the challenges we face, whether we have solutions to them or not, we are in a better state to cope with them and to manage them. So that brings me back to what you were saying about, people sitting at home with their kids. We are not, as adults, these effects, the stress is not limited to us. Our children are picking up on our stress, and they have their own stress that's accumulating. This is all new. There's a lot that's unknown, a lot that they don't understand, that, quite frankly, as an adult, I don't understand the full implication of how this is going to impact my life. So, I'm sure I'm not alone in that. And, we can't expect our children to be understanding it.
Yeah, sorry, just to add to this, I think I mean, after our conversation the other night, I actually had a conversation with my daughter, just to let her sort of grasp that, in terms of saying, well, the reality is this, and to be okay with being scared of it, you know. And I think a lot of people are kind of at that shock level where they haven't really accepted or acknowledged the reality of it, and they're kind of hoping, okay, you know, as soon as everything changes, then we'll go back to normal. And the reality of the situation really is we may not go back to normal. There may not be a normal that we used to. It might be completely changed. So, you know, acknowledging the reality of how this might be different from here on out. I think that also really, people really need to make that connection.
Yeah. So Kev, yeah, I absolutely agree. It's so important to express and demonstrate empathy, for our kids, for ourselves, to say to them, you know what, to help them feel understood. Whether you understand or not is actually irrelevant. They need to feel understood.
Yes.
So there's a couple of just really simple things that we can do, which helps us as adults to bring our cortisol levels down. It'll help our children, and it'll help us to create, I suppose, a safer environment or a more predictable environment. If we look at the core needs that we have as human beings, one of them is having autonomy, and having control over our environment.
Yeah.
And at the moment, for our kids, for us, for a lot of people, that's being compromised. So, the first thing that I would suggest that might be quite helpful is to introduce some kind of structure. While doing that, though, we need to understand what is the purpose of introducing structure, and we have to allow flexibility in the structure, and we need to understand why that's important.
Yeah.
So, I was just brainstorming a bit and thinking about, okay, so what is the purpose of structure in this situation? Because we are in a crisis, we're in a highly stressful situation, we're in an environment where suddenly work and home are happening in the same place. And that's not the easiest thing to manage.
Yeah.
So firstly, for anybody trying to get some work done, it's important to create time that will be uninterrupted, that we can do some work. In order to do that, however, our children need to be secure and know that they will get the time they need to. So I would suggest that the structure remains fairly high level, not too rigid, but just some kind of expectation that blocks time out. So, in the morning, we'll get up and we'll have breakfast together. Then I will give you some homework to do, explain it to you. You need to go and sit and do it. If you get stuck, leave it out, and then we'll go through it together and I will help you, so that they know what to expect.
Yeah.
Then you're going to have downtime, and you can go outside and ride your bicycle if you have that option, or you can go and, whatever it is your child likes to do. And during that time, you need to understand that I have got work to do. So for 1 hour, you need to keep yourself busy with this and let me concentrate. After that, you and I will spend some time. And it's important that we stick to giving them that time.
Yeah.
So it's really about setting boundaries, setting clear expectations, and also reassuring them that in the structure of your day, they have their time where they will have your attention.
I just want to add to that, sorry, Jen, but the creating also, from a brain language perspective. I like calling it brain language because then it's language that you're currently using in your head. A lot of the time, if you don't create the structure and give some kind of language to it, we all go into well, I assume this is what you mean, until you clarify what the structure is, what the boundary is. And I'm so glad you're saying flexible structure, because it doesn't mean you have to now have a schooling day. It doesn't mean you have to have an 8 to 1 kind of structure. it could be, however it's set out, but have flexibility in that, so that you get to work as the adult, your child gets to work as the child, and yet as family, you still get to create a bit of family time. But if it's not brain languaged and it's not given in a certain kind of structured format, I think a lot of times people just assume, and especially when you have older kids, you're kind of going, go and do your homework, or aren't you supposed to be studying? So, but having, creating a bit of structure for a 13-year-old, 15-year-old could also help them kind of just give them brain language. And it makes the process a lot easier.
Mm. And Kev, I think it's important to recognize that regardless of the age group we're working with people.
Yeah.
So, the need for autonomy, respect, some authority over their own life, the need to be accepted, the affiliation, to know that they have a place that they fit in.
Yeah.
The need to understand that they have a role in the system. That they have a status. It doesn't, that doesn't mean a level of importance, but they have a specific place here. Yeah. And that they are appreciated and acknowledged. All of those things apply, whether we're talking about a 3-year-old, a 5-year-old, a 10-year-old, a 40-year-old.
Yeah.
So when I speak about that flexibility, one of the suggestions that somebody sent me a while ago around homeschooling is to lay out for them at the beginning of the day what is expected of them. And wherever possible, give them the autonomy to decide when during their homework or schoolwork session they are going to choose to do each item. If they want to do one little exercise and take a 10-minute break and come back and do another little exercise, as long as they are completing what needs to be done each day, give them that. Let them manage it.
Yeah.
You might, especially with younger children, you might initially need to help them structure that, help them plan it. But, as they're taking it on and as they're starting to manage their time, let them.
Yeah.
That's really important. The other thing around the flexibility comes back to the recognition of the fact that your children are stressed too.
Yeah.
So, if you are dealing with a child who is highly sensitive and really stressed and just not coping, take some pressure off. At the end of the day, if they write 3 sentences to explain a concept of English, or 20 sentences, their world is not going to stop.
Yeah.
Help them to regulate their own state, and they will become more easily able to cope.
Yeah.
So around that concept of regulating state, without getting too technical, without going into too much of an explanation, I just want to offer some really simple little tips. If you want to Google, if you want to message me and find out more and have more of an explanation about why it works, absolutely feel free. I'm happy to chat.
Yes.
But just for the average person who needs something that's going to take the edge off and make the situation more manageable.
And just to add, we're going to have more information about this on the blog, and we'll share that afterwards as well.